another episode of Kevin and I talk about gaming tips for your table. And today we're talking about when bad dice happen to good characters, or when characters, let's be honest, when bad ideas happen to good characters, because I would argue that we're going to be talking about character death. And at least in my humble experience, Kevin, I would say that about 20, I am known in my gaming circles for deservedly or undeservedly for killing a lot of characters. And really what it comes down to is I've never purposefully killed a character. I would say about 20% of the time, bad dice rolls have affected the outcome. Like, you need to make this save, you need to make this dodge roll. But 80% of it is, what if I do X? Or, I know that you've been warning me for the last hour that this is a bad idea, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to open that door and give the gnolls the middle finger. Going back to your original role-playing story. To the point, by the way, I don't know if you can see this. My group got me a cause of death stamp. So any character dies, I have to stamp their character sheet and write what caused it. So anyway, we're talking about character death. Kevin, do you have any memorable character deaths that have happened in your campaign?
Well, I gotta say, you killer game masters, it's always the other guy. It wasn't my fault. It was the player. That's what they all say.
Okay, but sometimes it's true.
No, I agree. I agree completely. Yeah, it's in my experience, they either most deaths occur because the player didn't think things through, or like you said, ignored 500 warnings you gave them that this is not a good idea. Maybe you shouldn't open that door. Okay, you're opening it. Maybe you should run. Nope, you're going forward. Maybe you should drop to your knees and beg for mercy. Nope, you're drawing your sword or your gun or your superpower.
I swear I didn't plan this, but the coaster that I have in front of me, my players got for me that says, "Are you sure?"
That's good. I like that.
Because I say that to them a lot. Wait, are you sure that's what you want to do? Oh, maybe it's not.
Yeah, I use "Are you sure?" a lot as well, and and it kind of gets back to gambling. Everyone always assumes that I could be a winner. That's how lotto works, and and I'm there. I bought Powerball tickets when it was up there, and because someone's got to win, and why not me?
Why not you?
And excuse me. But your chance of winning a lotto is, especially those kind of big lottos that have multiple states and even other countries, some of them.
Yeah,
you're more likely to get hit by lightning 3 times than you are. I mean, it's crazy. But hope springs eternal, and so especially if you're playing a swashbuckling superhero or knight or wizard or cyber knight or glitter boy or whatever you're playing.
And here's the thing, like, Palladium Games has a lot of safeguards in it for instant character deaths, right? SDC is a great buffer.
Thanks.
The healing magic. Right, when my players in my Palladium fantasy game get into the HP, they know things are bad, and those lingering damages do linger. But we have 2 priests in the party, so once a melee, somebody's getting healed for free. Like, there are, armor absorbs. The rule that you put in Rifts that says when the mega damage is destroyed, it kind of absorbs the remaining. So that's that one last chance that all right, now you have no armor, but you're not dead yet. You get one more
Yep.
kind of get out of
Dodge behind that rock or run for the hills. Absolutely.
right.
And in my games, especially my fantasy games, I often had mechanisms where characters could get resurrected.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was always consequences, like someone had to gamble their soul away, or potentially gamble their soul away, or they had to go on some kind of a mission. Because I had this the classic Lady of the Lake kind of thing, and the goddess she'd be happy to resurrect people or heal people and restore if you brought back their limb. Look, here's Bob's arm. Can you do something? Sure, I can. But you got to go on a mission for me. You got to do this or that. And sometimes that mission was not always necessarily good. Or you'd find out, okay, did this thing. We stole this thing, gave it to the goddess, and then, holy crap, someone did something bad with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't know what her machinations are. And so I liked having those kind of vehicles because I personally hate killing characters, although, like you, I had a reputation for being a killer game master. Because, look, if you're going to play foolishly, death is a very real consequence, and it's going to happen. So my experience has been either people die foolishly, like my first character when we escaped, and I got so much gold and loot that I jingle when I walk, and no one can prove that I stole it. And what do? I open up those big double doors where the giant gnolls were running to attack us, and I give them the bird. My character flips him the bird. Shook.
Yep.
Giant-sized arrow right through the chest. And I had already taken damage. Besides, it was a first-level character. I would have been dead no matter what. But, boom, gone. Just like when your character, when you're speeding and, you get a ticket. I know a lot of people who get really upset. Oh, that damn cop. It's like, but you're the guy behind the steering wheel. You're driving 10 miles over the speed limit. Dude, you knew the risk. There was an old TV show that people don't quote anymore because the actor Robert Blake kind of got into some really despicable trouble. But there used to be a great show called Beretta, and one of his ongoing lines was, "Don't do the crime if you can't do the time." So, if you screw up, there's going to be consequences. And so that's one way characters die. And another way I found is they die heroically. Mm-hmm. And that might even be sometimes, oh man, they just made a bad saving throw, or they failed their parry or whatever. But that's because they were fighting against something evil, or they're trying to protect people against something evil or bad, and they died. And I especially love the heroic ones. Like, I've had a number of great death moments. Two of them by Julius Rosenstein, who was a great game master and a great player. And one of them was the classic, "You guys run, I'll hold them off for as long as I can." And it was epic. And what was really cool, because like the dice gods were there for him that day. I mean, he took out like 5 or 6 bad guys.
Yep.
Before he, took his last breath.
I will say, players at my table, one guy in particular, my buddy Calvin, knows that when the situation is dire, when the group has made a ton of bad decisions, that he can come to me and say, "Here's what I want, and I'm willing for my character to die to get it."
That's cool.
That he has my undivided attention. That like I will bend the rules to the point of breaking, because I love heroic deaths like that. I love watching somebody go, "This is so important that my character is no longer important." I want to see it continue.
Absolutely. There are a couple times with the Defilers where they thought they were dead meat, but they're still there, fighting away. That's pretty awesome. And in fact, the mechanic that we're going to be incorporating in future Palladium games. That's in Rift Savage World that I love. It was inspired by the juicer, whose life is limited unless he gets detox. Because juicers, for those who aren't familiar with Rifts, juicers, there's a running theme of human augmentation, and the juicer's augmentation, as the name suggests, is chemicals. So he's basically kind of Bane or whatever, and so they're juiced up all the time, but it takes a toll on their bodies, and they typically have like 4 to 6 years to live. And if they decide to detox, which most of them don't do because they get to love being basically Captain America.
Yep.
A super soldier. They love it. They love it. And they can't give it up. Or they have all kinds of other reasons to stay juiced. Because it's easy to justify what you're doing until it's too late. And when last call starts, it's all over. But a great mechanic that is built into the Savage World rules is your blaze of glory. You get to go out in a blaze of glory. So if you're a juicer, you can burn out right there, then and there, by getting like all your abilities like amped up. But when you're done, you're dead. You know that. You announce, this is my blaze of glory, and you get to be that guy in the action movie who takes out 52 bad guys before he goes down.
Yeah.
Or if you're John Wick, 152.
That's right.
That's on a bad day because he got hit by a car 3 times and fell off a building eight stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a great mechanic, and I love it because it gives people a license to consider going out in a blaze of glory, in a heroic, super heroic moment. I love it.
Yeah.
And of course, it's the player's choice. But yeah, so either people die heroically or they die foolishly. And my most famous, in my mind, foolish death was, and this guy was a young player. He was like 15, I think. And he was just introduced to role playing, and he had heard about my Defiler game, begged if he could join it. And I'm like, sure.
Okay.
And I think he just wanted action. I think he thought he was Wolverine. I don't know. But, he listens at the door, and I make it very clear that you hear multiple voices. Multiple voices. And they already know that there's ogres and trolls in here. And he goes, well, can I tell if they're ogres or trolls? I go, well, you don't speak that language, but it's a fair guess. Yes, it's one or both. And can I tell like how many there are? And I'm like, okay, sure, you're listening. And I had him roll something, and I'm like, yeah, there's at least 8 distinct voices that you hear. This is one little guy, and I knew he was a paladin, I think, but big whoop, he's a first or second level paladin. All right, and he like carefully picked the lock. He was able to pick the lock, or maybe the door wasn't open, wasn't locked. Probably wasn't locked because I'm like one of those guys. If you're big ass monsters, you're probably not worried about locking your door.
Yeah,
especially if there's and so he opens the door and flings it open, and rushes in. And I'm like, you sure you want to do that? Yeah, I rush in. I'm like, okay. And he rushes in, and he stops like, what do I see? I go, you see 15 guys, like 8 of them are orcs, the others are trolls. And they look at you, and I go, what are you doing? And I'm waiting for him to say, I turn tail and run. I knew he had seen Mighty Python and the Holy Grail.
That's right.
Run away. This is your moment to run away.
Or a Tom and Jerry episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or Bugs Bunny or any of those. And he goes, I've got my magic sword in one hand, which is just a minor thing, and I pull out my other sword and I shout surrender. And I really like to think about and role play what happens in my head. So I'm thinking this is scrawny little first level paladin just ran into the door and charged forward and demanded that they surrender. So they all burst out laughing.
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable response.
And I'm thinking, okay, and I'm like, okay, so they're laughing. You have a chance to run. And he's like, no. And he like calls them names or insists that they, and again, I'm trying to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, the lead guy comes up and says, puny little human, you are most amusing, so we'll let you live. Now go away. And he attacks the guy. And so, the troll kicks the shit out of him. And, they say, surrender. And he's like, I'll never surrender. And he charges again. And he died.
Yep.
I think they did everything humanly possible for him not to die. And it's like, clearly he was surprised, by the way, when he died, which I don't understand. But
yeah, I've had my most memorable one like that was a group wanted to find a fight club in a city, and they were being really like just going up to random people at the bar. Hey, we want to fight somebody. Where can we fight? And this guy's like, I know where you can fight. Like, yeah, I'll put money on you. Like, yeah, we'll. And everyone else in the group is like, what's going on? This NPC never lied to these two people, but the rest of the group clearly figured out that this guy was going to go sell them to the gladiator arena and then sell their weapons. And so, yep, they willingly walked into the gladiator pit, willingly divested themselves of all of their weapons. They're like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna make money. And by the time they figured out what was going on, I was like, I don't want this to be like the end of these characters. So it was a fight to first blood. And I explained the rules. The guy is like getting the crowd worked up, explaining the rules. This is just a fight to first blood. And I turned to one of the characters. I'm like, what do you do? And they're like, I go berserk. And I was like, the only person who can bring you out of your berserk state is not here. Like, if you go berserk, you have to fight until either you die or everyone else in the gladiator pit is dead.
He's like, yes, exactly.
And I'm like, do you? And so sure enough, that character did not make it. Like, I think the other player ended up helping the other team put down his friend because he's like, I'm in the pit with them. I'm next. If they kill these, the two guys we're fighting, they have to turn on me. And I'm like, well, all right. All right. So we've talked about fun stories about how characters have died. What do you do when a player death happens at the table?
Well, I like to, if I can, especially if he died heroically, I like to celebrate that in some way. Although sometimes you can't do that right away, because if you're in the middle of a battle, like when Julius's character died, so the rest of the group could get away, they're still being pursued, so we can't stop and have a funeral service. So, we just kind of continue on with the logical action. And then what I like to do afterwards, and I like to do this anyway, is when we're done playing a particular game session, I like to go over key moments and say, oh, J-M, when your character figured out this or that, really smart, really good role playing. And Alex, when you were doing this, when your character took down the big bad guy with that big fatal shot, when you rolled that natural 20, and the whole rest of the group jumped up and cheered. Great moment, man. Good job. And if someone had died, it'd be like, gosh, Julius, that was such a great moment. We were all impressed. And typically the rest of the group's like, oh, yeah, man, thanks. We can't believe that you sacrificed us. And, in this particular case, too, they kind of wanted to go back and see if they get his body to try to resurrect him. But, there was nothing left. They never really got a chance to go back. And I told them, even if you did, there was nothing left there.
Yeah.
So it would have done no good anyway, and you were putting yourselves at risk. So it was smart that you didn't. And then if the group wants to have a eulogy or something, I let them. And in the case of the Defilers, there were a number of Defilers who had passed, and they had started a Garden of Champions, where they would pay to erect a statue of a particular fallen hero.
Oh.
And so you had this Garden of Champions in a town square where people could come and see them. And I thought that was really nice.
Yeah.
And that wasn't my idea. It was some of the players. When you're running with 26 guys, someone's likely to come up with a good idea.
That's right. Yeah.
And, they came up with that idea, and I'm like, I love it. Yes, you can do this. I like to do that because the recap and I also reveal things, especially if it doesn't have consequences for what I have planned for the next couple of games. I'll point out that not only was your death really important because it allowed your heroes to get away, but it made the bad guys think twice about their actions, and it made them nervous and paranoid because, oh my God, these guys are, look how many that this one man took down, and we've got the rest of the group. It was not the Defilers, by the way. We have the rest of the group to deal with, and and now they're just not so cocksure of themselves.
Yeah.
And that gave the group an advantage later, or it caused them to retreat or turn, and run when something else happened. So there's lots of. I like to always think about the consequences, and I like my players to feel like their death wasn't in vain, unless it was totally stupid. And then it's like, and J-M, when your character did this or that, what the hell?
What were you thinking?
and then I try to lighten it up by, making jokes. I mean, not at the player's expense, but, making jokes, in relation to the death or whatever. So everyone has a good laugh about it. And then it's okay. And then, if it's like a player on player, if they turn against one another, then it's like, well, you knew this was going to happen. Like an episode ago, we were talking about, if you play a bad guy in a predominantly good group, or a spy, and you betray your comrades. I told the story back when we did Tales of the Defilers, but one of my players was playing a bad guy, and he thought he could turn the head of the Thieves Guild, who was one of the player characters. He had risen to that point, and he was sure he could turn him, and it was just the bad guy, the head of the Thieves Guild, and an NPC, Fearless. And I had kind of gotten tired of Fearless running him, and I was trying to figure out a graceful way to take him out of the group. Not necessarily kill him, but the bad guy says, I kill Fearless, and he kills Fearless, dumps his body into lava so they can't resurrect him. Fearless is gone; he's just toast.
Yeah.
And the head of the Thieves Guild is like, "You did what?" He's like, "Hey, the guy was a bumpkin. He's not really a paladin," because Fearless thought he was a paladin.
Yeah.
And the group had loved, most of the players in the group had fallen in love with this character, which I didn't realize myself. And the head of the Thieves Guild's like, he had these sunglasses, because we had a mix of technologies and dimensions and things, even in my old Defiler campaign. And he goes, I use my sunglass of teleportation. I teleport behind him and I cut his head off. And I'm like, okay, roll to see if you can pull it off. And I'm like, you can, to the bad guy, I'm like, you can, roll to dodge or parry. And he teleports behind the guy, rolls a natural 20, had a Whirlpool sword because we were still playing a hybrid of my stuff and D&D, chops the guy's head off. And the player kept going, wait, let's talk about this. Like, Kevin, I don't want to talk. I popped behind him, I cut his head off. And the guy's like, oh, wait, I'll give you this, I'll do that. And he's like, Kevin, I teleport behind him and I cut his head off. And I'm like, roll for it. sorry, dude, your head's gone. You knew you're going to die if you're, betraying the defilers. You knew this was an option, and the player was cool about it because he knew. And I think that's the other trick is you need to let your players know that at the onset of the game, and maybe remind them from time to time, especially if they're going to a really dangerous situation, that there are consequences in this game. You need to play as a team, or you're going to be in trouble. And you know what? You could die. People could die. I just want you guys to know, if you continue on this course of action, which maybe I even endorse as heroes, this is what you should do. But people may die, and be ready for that.
So the
players never are. They're never ready. No. When my character died that first time, I literally jumped out of my seat and screamed, "What?" And Julius explained, "Well, Kevin, why did you do that? It was dumb." And I mean, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, right. Yeah. This is great."
My gaming group has a saying that usually comes up when the first character in a campaign dies, coined by my good friend Brad. He was like, "Listen, if no one dies, it isn't an adventure. It's just an outing. It's an adventure as soon as somebody dies." And I think we talk a lot about storytelling. We talk a lot about adventures on this channel, but we also talk a lot about player agency. And honestly, for me, the risk of death is the greatest sign that there is player agency. If my player can do something so heroic, so foolish, so boneheaded that they could die, then I do have freedom of the setting to do what I want.
Oh, absolutely. I'm in total agreement with that. I play the same way.
Now, you said that, players are always shocked when their character dies. It always comes as a shock. How do you handle at the table when someone doesn't take it well when their character dies?
I try to explain the situation and say, look, you knew going in that this could happen, and, it was your choice to stay back and hold the guys off, and there was no other way out. So bravo, but roll up a new character.
Yeah.
Or, pull them aside and say, hey, that was a boneheaded move. And, I told a tale of, again, it was the filer, of this one guy who was just dedicated to being the lone wolf. And he always brought in the same character because he was loving this character. So when his first character died, his very first adventure, because he was not playing as a team with the rest of the players, he was just his lone wolf and goes off on his own in a hyper dangerous place and dies. And it's like, dude, what do you expect? That's okay, Kev. I get it. Yeah. And it's like, all right, great. And he comes back in next week with the character's twin brother.
Mm-hmm.
He dies. And it's like next week he's back with the guy's almost identical cousin. And he goes 2 weeks and he dies. And it's like sometimes it just takes a while for a player to get it. And I would just sit back and just go, Dave, what are you thinking? And we just talked, and he was pretty good about it. If someone's really upset, again, I try to, and especially if they did die heroically, if foolishly, I try to go look, you learned something here, and your character did something brave, but you had bad rolls, or sometimes the better part of valor is retreating, or surrendering. Because like you, I hate to slaughter characters, and the Defilers got themselves in a couple of situations where, and other groups that I've ran, where it's like you either need to surrender or you're going to die. And, and it's always that,
players
for me,
hate having their characters surrender.
Well, and they hate surrendering, and it's just this moment where you're thinking, 5 out of the 6 players are all ready to surrender, but the one guy's like, no one takes my gun from me. No one, kind of thing. You're like, oh, because his actions could cause the entire group to die, or people tend to be loyal, especially in these games. So if one member of your group is going down with a fight, the rest of you are like, shoot.
Yep.
They got to jump in and die too. And I'm like, oh no. It's like that scene in Tombstone where, one of the characters, kind of like winks or
shoot out at the OK Corral. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, the OK Corral. And the guy pulls out his gun and it's like, here we go now.
Yep.
And there's no turning back. So I'm always happy when they do decide to surrender, because now you have that opportunity to escape or win your freedom in the gladiatorial arena, or whatever the heck's going to happen. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of just talking to people and explaining, that was good, or hey, Animal House, hey, you screwed up.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Like I said, I loved all of the safeguards you have. I mean, coming out of original D&D, where you could very easily start with 1 hit point as a fighter. Like you could start with 1 hit point, right? Palladium, it's a D6, but it's plus your physical endurance, and you get an SDC buffer, in
probably armor.
You've got armor on, and that's good because, right, when you're playing first or second edition or basic versions of D&D, making a new character is as simple as rolling 3d6 6 times and spending 100 gold pieces, and I'm back in the game. Palladium characters are a little bit more developed, and it takes a little bit more time to make a character. So I'm always a fan of, if it's easy to make a character, I don't mind if death is easy. If it takes time to make a character, I want death to be a little bit harder, because there's a difference between sitting out for 5 minutes and making a new character and sitting out for half hour to an hour making a character.
Yep. And those are all deliberate choices, by the way. Those are all deliberate design choices, because my background is comic books.
Yep.
And so I sit back and I go, even if it's a farm boy like Luke Skywalker, even if it's a farm boy who's turned, adventurer, he's not your average guy. He's not, Bob the farmer. He's this guy who's destined to become some great hero.
Yeah.
And so the heroes should have these abilities above and beyond. And I want them to have strong character and motives and abilities and things that people can really sink their teeth into, because I'm looking at long stories and that kind of comic book TV series development versus a video game where the character's dead, bring in your next character,
start your level over,
just reload.
Now, wrapping up here, I love what you said about resurrection costing something earlier. When I run games, essentially resurrection always requires a trip to the underworld, finding the soul of the person you're trying to bring back and trying to make it out in time, because basically you've torn a hole in reality, and the longer it takes you to find your buddy, the more things are now looking for that way out. Right? One soul gets to come back through, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your buddy's soul if I get there first and I can get out. Yet, I will be honest, resurrection is not something that I really associate with Rifts.
No, me either, actually.
Yeah. So,
but you can. It's there.
It's there. I could see coming back as a cloned, person. I could see, consciousness, more sci-fi side of things. But it's weird to me that you brought it up and I was nodding. I'm like, yes, this is how I handle resurrection in my games. And in Palladium Fantasy, yes, that's at the forefront of my head. If players can get enough coin together, they can bring their buddies back at the Temple of Light and Dark. Or if you have a priest, they got a 7% chance, a 3% chance, but it goes up.
Yeah.
But in Rifts, that's...
Why not?
Yeah. it's a good point. Like,
I mean, there's gods all over the place in demon. I mean, just in Rifts, you got to be really careful making sure that god's
true.
Of course, in fantasy too, but especially in Rifts, you want to make sure you're not pledging your soul to something bad or, making a deal with the devil quite literally. And if they do, game masters, give them an out. Always, they're the heroes of the game.
Yeah.
I always want to try to give them some way out because they're supposed to win. They're the heroes.
Yeah.
And you don't set it up so it's automatic, and that's why people die. Because that's what makes it true consequences, and that's what makes the battles mean something. That's what makes their sacrifices mean something.
I think one of the things that I wish my players would do more in games, and I remember when my character in our Rifts game, and I think he was like 9th or 10th level. We had been playing for a very long time, and he died, and I was like, oh, I'm crushed, but okay. And one of my players was like, no, we've got to find a way to bring him back. Can you run something where we would bring your character back? And I'm like, that feels a little self-serving, because we had like 5 or 6 GMs, but I'm like, if you want to ask one of the other GMs, I'm totally for it. And so they went to one of the other game masters and says, we want to go rescue this character's soul and bring him back to life. Players, go to your GMs, say, I want to bring this character back. What can I do? And I guarantee you most GMs worth their salt are going to be like, you're invested in the campaign. You want to do something heroic. This may not be an easy quest, but it's a worthy one. Let's play this out.
Absolutely.
And I know we talk a lot about Rifts. We have a lot of focus on Rifts, and then you and I have a special love of like fantasy. But let's be honest, this kind of stuff happens in comics all the time. So if you're a Heroes Unlimited GM and you're like, what does this have to do with me? Come on, man. Clones, twins, alternate reality variants, comas, right? No body, no crime. That's the motto of soap operas and superheroes. Right?
And they've gone into hell to bring them back.
Yeah.
I can name numerous characters who, some of which I'm like, why is like Foggy Nelson in hell? He was a good guy, and of course demons are involved with his death. But why the hell is Foggy?
You're talking about the Chip Zdarsky run. I just finished that recently. It was a good run. Like,
and it was a great run, but I didn't understand it. Like, why? It was just a way to bring him back. Well, it launched a whole nother series of demon-based stories with Daredevil. But, it's like, there are ways to do that, and definitely ask your game master. And just to kind of follow up on, how do you handle it with the player? There's a lot of times where if a player's character died, I just kind of take them aside one-on-one and say, hey, you played great. I know your character died, but, maybe it wasn't your fault. And maybe you didn't even try to be heroic, but, you did and you played great. And, it's a life and death situation.
Yep.
And, your death may have saved other characters. But it happens and it's okay. And I love you. We're still friends, right? Kind of thing. And it's just nice that they just feel appreciated, I think, sometimes.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much. I hope you, the audience, are enjoying these chats as much as I am. These are just this whole playlist is just going to be, RPG gaming advice and tips from Kevin. And hopefully it feels like a conversation. If there's topics you want to see us cover, please leave comments in the chat and we will add them to the list.